She had no weapon, no badge, no authority in that room whatsoever. She was the maid, and she watched a trained assassin set up a kill shot that nobody else in that building even noticed. She had maybe 4 seconds to decide what to do. No time to warn security, no time to run, no time to think about what this would cost her. So she did something that changed both their lives forever. She kissed him, right there, in front of everyone, and the shot never came. But here's the part nobody talks about. Surviving the assassin was the easy part, because after that night, Merle Foreman had a much bigger problem. Gunwoo Chung doesn't forget people who surprise him, and she was the first person who ever had. But to understand how a maid ends up saving the most dangerous man in Seoul, we have to go back to the night it all started. The banquet hall didn't have a name on any public record. No listing, no permit, no press. Just 3 floors of marble and chandelier light somewhere in the heart of Seoul, filled with the kind of men who don't appear in photographs. Politicians who moved money quietly, financiers who funded things no one asked about, and others who didn't have job titles at all. Merle had worked enough of these events to stop being shocked by them. That was the trick, actually. You stop looking, you stop listening, you carry the tray, you refill the glass, you make yourself nothing. Just movement in the background, just part of the room. Powerful men talk freely around staff, always have, because to them, you're furniture, and furniture doesn't remember. Merle had learned that lesson early, long before Seoul, long before any of this. Invisibility wasn't weakness, it was strategy. It kept her employed. It kept her safe. It kept her alive. So that night, she moved through the room the way she always did. Eyes down, steps light, tray level. And that's exactly why she noticed him. He was standing near the east wall, black jacket, hands loose at his sides, a glass he hadn't touched once in 40 minutes. Most people at a party like this, even the dangerous ones, they perform. They laugh too loud or stand too stiff or check their phones. They do something that makes them look like they belong. This man did nothing. His eyes never moved to the food, never moved to the guests, never moved to the room at all. They moved to one person, and one person only. Gunwoo Chung stood at the center of the hall the way a fixed point holds a map together. Perfectly still, perfectly composed. The kind of calm that isn't peace, it's power. The kind that says, I have already decided what happens in this room, and it will happen exactly that way. He had a neck tattoo that crept just above his collar, hands that looked relaxed but never fully were, and eyes that processed everything without ever appearing to look. Half the room owed him something. The other half feared what he could take. Merle had refilled his glass twice that evening. He hadn't acknowledged her either time. Of course he hadn't. She was furniture. But the man by the east wall, he wasn't watching the room anymore. His right hand shifted, barely, a half-inch movement most people would never catch. Merle caught it. She knew that shift. She'd grown up in places where you learned to read a body before it moved, because by the time it moved, it was already too late. Wrong posture, 2 still hands, an earpiece hidden just beneath his collar. This wasn't a guest. This wasn't even security. This was someone waiting for a specific angle, a specific moment. And the moment was now. Merle's tray was still in her hands. Security was positioned at every door, and every single one of them was watching the wrong direction. She had no weapon, no radio, no way to cross this room fast enough to warn anyone without tipping him off first. 4 seconds, maybe 3. Her eyes went to Gunwoo, then back to the man by the wall, then to the distance between them. She did the math the way she always did, fast, quiet, cold, and she moved. She was already moving, not running, not panicking, just moving, fast, deliberate, like someone who'd already run the numbers and didn't love the answer. Her tray hit a side table. She didn't even look back. Every step closed the distance. Every second counted down. The man by the east wall shifted his weight. There it is. She saw the angle. She saw Gunwoo's position. She saw exactly what needed to happen for that shot to miss. One thing, one person needed to be standing right there. So Merle grabbed his lapel, both hands firm, no hesitation. And before Gunwoo Chung, the most feared man in Seoul, could even process what was happening to him, she pressed her lips to his. The room didn't stop, but she felt it stutter. From the assassin's angle, Gunwoo's vitals vanished completely behind her. The shot window closed. 1 second, 2, 3. Security finally moved. 4 whole seconds too late, by the way. 4 whole seconds. These men get paid how much? Chaos rippled through the room. The assassin dissolved into the crowd. Gone. Clean. And Merle slowly pulled back. She didn't run, didn't explain, just stood there, hands still at his collar, breathing. Gunwoo's face was unreadable. Not scared, not grateful. Violated, like someone had reached into his chest without asking permission. Which, fair. 2 of his men grabbed Merle by the arms and pulled her back before she could speak. She didn't fight it. She'd known this part was coming. But as they dragged her away, Gunwoo Chung didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched her go. And then quietly, so quietly only the man beside him heard it, find out who she is. Merle spent that whole night waiting to disappear. You know what I mean by that. Not leave. Disappear. She sat in a cold back room, hands in her lap, counting the minutes, waiting for the door to open, waiting for the conversation that ends with no conversation at all. That's how these things go. She knew that. The door opened, and instead of a threat, she got a new assignment. Closer quarters, East Wing, effective immediately. Merle blinked. That was it. No interrogation, no accusations, just a reassignment slip and a look from the head of security that said, "Don't ask questions you don't want answered." So she didn't. But she felt them watching her. Every hallway, every room. Eyes she couldn't always see, but always felt. She was no longer furniture. She was a specimen. Meanwhile, 3 floors up, Gunwoo Chung was doing something he almost never did, rewatching, frame by frame by frame. He saw the moment her tray hit the table. He saw her eyes track across the room. He saw her calculate, actually calculate, angles, distance, bodies. Then he saw the gun. Then he saw the angle the bullet would have taken. Then he saw Merle step directly into it. He leaned back slowly. She knew. Not a panic reaction, not an accident. She knew exactly what she was doing. So he pulled her file. Foster care system, 7 different placements, survival jobs across 3 countries, no criminal record, no mafia ties, no known affiliations. Nothing that explained her, which was the problem. Everyone fits a category. Informant, asset, threat, liability. Merle Foreman fit none of them. And that bothered Gunwoo Chung more than the assassination attempt ever did. He closed the file, sat with it for a long moment, then spoke to the room without looking up. "Bring her to me." The room they brought her to didn't look like a threat. That was the threat. No guards visible, no table between them, just Gunwoo Chung standing by a window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out at Seoul like it owed him something, which it probably did. He didn't turn around when she walked in, didn't rush, just let the silence sit there, doing its job. Most people crack in silence like that, start talking, start explaining, start apologizing for things they haven't even been accused of yet. Merle stood still and waited. Finally, you saw him before my entire security team did. Not a question, not quite an accusation, just a fact he was laying on the table between them. Merle said nothing. You calculated the angle. Still nothing. He turned then, slow, those eyes landing on her like a weight. So tell me, who sent you? And Merle looked him dead in the face. I reacted. 3 words. No elaboration, no apology, no dropping of the eyes. Gunwoo studied her for a long moment, because here's the thing about powerful men. They know fear. They've seen every version of it. Shaking hands, steady voice hiding shaking hands, defiance that's actually just panic wearing a costume. This wasn't any of that. She genuinely wasn't afraid of him, respected what he could do, but afraid? No. He offered protection then, framed it carefully, a new arrangement, safety in exchange for proximity. Merle's expression didn't change. I saved your life once, she said quietly. That doesn't mean I belong to you. The room went very still. Nobody talks to Gunwoo Chung like that. Nobody. And instead of anger, he felt something shift, something he didn't have a name for yet. He turned back to the window. Reassign her, he said. A pause. Closer. Closer didn't mean safer. Merle figured that out fast. Her new quarters were nicer. Her new duties were lighter. She was no longer carrying trays through crowded halls or blending into marble floors. She was adjacent to him now. Same wing, same schedule, same orbit. And it felt less like a promotion and more like a leash. The watching never stopped. Different faces every day, but the same eyes. Always somewhere in the room, always angled toward her. She started counting them out of habit. 2 by the east corridor, 1 near the kitchens, someone always on the floor above. Protective detail, they called it. Merle had another word for it. But the real problem was that people were talking. See, in a world this small and this dangerous, a secret travels faster than news. And the story of the maid who kissed Gunwoo Chung at the Cho Gala, that story had legs. Rival syndicates heard it within days, twisted it, colored it in, decided what it meant without asking anyone. To them, Merle wasn't staff anymore. She was leverage. And Gunwoo was changing in ways he probably didn't notice, but Merle did. He'd pass through a room and his eyes would find her first, just for a second, quick, like a reflex he hadn't approved. He'd change plans without explanation, routes, timings, rooms, and somehow she'd always end up accounted for. He was testing something. She just didn't know what yet. Merle lay awake one night running the numbers the same way she'd run them at that gala. Stay and become something she couldn't name. Leave and become a target with no shield. Neither option felt like freedom. She was still working through it when the message arrived. Not from Gunwoo's people, from someone else entirely. We know what you did, and we know how to use you. She didn't respond to the message. Didn't tell Gunwoo's security either. She just watched, waited, kept her routine exactly the same. Because whoever sent it wanted a reaction, and Merle had learned a long time ago, don't give people what they're waiting for. 3 days later, they made their move. Service entrance, early morning. The one window in her schedule where the detail was thinnest. Professional. 2 men, clean approach, no aggression until it was necessary. They were good. Merle was better. Not because she was trained, not because she was some secret weapon nobody knew about, but because she'd grown up in places where you learned to read a room or you didn't get another chance. First man grabbed her arm, she used the door. Second man blocked the exit, she used the wall. By the time the third one appeared, she was already gone. Gunwoo's team arrived 4 minutes later, found 2 men on the ground and Merle standing in the corridor, breathing hard, uniform torn, very much alive. Gunwoo came himself. That was the tell, actually. He never comes himself. He stood in that corridor and looked at her, really looked, and something moved across his face that he shut down almost immediately, but Merle caught it. Guilt. He tripled her detail that same hour. New restrictions, new protocols, new rules she hadn't agreed to. And that's when Merle hit her limit. "You did this," she said. Quiet, controlled, but he heard every word underneath it. "Your obsession put a target on me. Your protection made me valuable to your enemies. And now you want to add more chains and call it safety?" She stepped closer. "So tell me right now, are you going to give me a real choice, or are we going to war about it?" Gunwoo didn't answer her right away. That was new. This man had responses for everything, measured, precise, delivered like he'd already thought 12 steps ahead. But standing in that corridor, he had nothing. He dismissed the detail with one gesture. Just the 2 of them now. And then, quietly, like it cost him something, "I don't lose control." Not defensive, almost confused, like he was reporting a fact that had suddenly stopped being true, and he couldn't explain why. In 20 years, not once. He looked at her. "Until you." Merle didn't soften. She'd heard pretty words weaponized before, grew up around it, actually. "I'm not yours to control," she said. "I know that." "Then why does every decision you've made since that night keep pulling me deeper into your world?" And Gunwoo actually paused, really sat with the question, because here's what he'd never admitted, not to his lieutenants, not to himself. He didn't want to own her. He told himself that's what it was. Easier that way, cleaner, fits a category. Asset, variable, security concern. But that wasn't it. He just wanted her near. Wanted to know she was in the building. Wanted to see how she read a room. Wanted to watch her be the only person who looked at him without calculating what he was worth. That realization hit him somewhere uncomfortable, because Gunwoo Chung handles enemies fine. Enemies he understands. This scared him more than anything in 20 years of violence. He opened his mouth to respond, and every alarm in the building screamed at once. His phone, 3 messages, the same word from 3 different sources. "They're here." The building locks down in under 60 seconds. Lights, doors, exits. Gunwoo's team moved like they'd rehearsed this, because they had. Positions locked, perimeter sealed, every protocol running exactly as designed. And it still wasn't enough. Because the rival syndicate hadn't come through the doors, they were already inside. 3 of Gunwoo's own men weren't his men anymore. Turned, bought, positioned perfectly. Professional didn't even cover it. By the time security identified the breach, Gunwoo was already separated from his detail. Corridor C, East Wing, 2 hostiles between him and every exit. Alone. For the first time in 20 years, Gunwoo Chung was genuinely cornered. Merle watched it happen from the monitor room. She'd slipped in during the chaos. Nobody thought to watch the maid during a lockdown, funny how that works. And she could see everything the security feeds showed, including the two things Gunwoo's Keem hadn't noticed yet: the third man coming from the service corridor, and the one unlocked exit that nobody was covering. She didn't grab a weapon, she grabbed a radio. Patched into the security frequency, she'd memorized the codes weeks ago because of course she had, and started talking. Calmly, precisely, rerouting Gunwoo's team without them even realizing she was the one doing it. East corridor, pull left. Service door, seal it now. Third hostile, 12 steps behind you. One by one, the pieces moved. The third man was intercepted, the exit was covered. Gunwoo walked out of that corridor, breathing. He found her in the monitor room afterward, still seated, radio on the table. He stood in the doorway for a long moment. "You did it again." "Different this time, though," Merle said quietly. She finally looked up. "Now you owe me a real conversation about my terms." The conversation lasted 3 hours. No security in the room, no recordings, no intermediaries. Just Gunwoo Chung actually listening. That might have been the most shocking thing that happened across this entire story, and we've had a lot of shocking moments. Merle laid it out simply. She wasn't his maid anymore. That was done. She wasn't his leverage, wasn't his asset, wasn't the woman he'd quietly decided to keep close because it made him feel something he couldn't categorize. She was herself. And if he wanted her in his world, truly in it, it would be on terms she agreed to, openly, clearly, with the ability to walk away intact. No gilded cage dressed up as protection. Gunwoo was quiet for a long time. Then, "I've never negotiated with someone I can't threaten." "I know," Merle said. "That's why you're still talking." He accepted her terms. Not gracefully, not immediately, but he accepted them. And something in that room shifted permanently, like a door closing on the version of this story where it ended badly. Weeks later, there was another gala. Same hall, same chandeliers, same dangerous men pretending to be civilized. But this time, Merle wasn't carrying a tray. She stood near the east wall, her wall now, watching the room the way she always had, reading hands, reading eyes, reading the things people try hardest to hide. And across the room, Gunwoo Chung glanced over, just once, not to check on her, to check with her. She gave him the smallest nod. Room's clean. He turned back to his guests. She was never the most powerful person in that building. She didn't need to be. Power isn't always the loudest voice or the sharpest weapon or the biggest name in the room. Sometimes, power is being the one variable nobody can predict. The one person who moves before anyone else breathes. The one woman who refused every single time to disappear. In a world ruled by fear, the most dangerous thing was a woman who knew exactly what she was worth. Here's what this story is really about. It's not about a kiss. It's not about a mafia boss. It's not even about soul. It's about what happens when a person who was taught to be invisible finally decides to be seen, on their own terms, at the highest possible cost, and wins anyway. That's the lesson. That's always been the lesson. You don't need permission to take up space. You never did. Now, I'm going to say something, and I need you to hear it clearly. If you watched this entire story, every chapter, every twist, every moment, and you don't subscribe, you are genuinely more cold-blooded than the assassin in Chapter 2. At least he had a reason for what he did. What's yours? Subscribe, comment, share. Merle saved a man's life with nothing but nerve and instinct. The least you can do is hit a button.